Topic 7. Reformist works in Europe, 1889 to 1981 in London. May 25, 1888 to mid-March 1889, Rizal decided to stay in London because he could improve in his English. Study and do an annotation of Antonio Margas' Successos de las Islas Filipinas, and perceived it was a place for him to carry on the reforms he wanted for the Philippines. So, napagdesisyonan ni Rizal na mag-stay sa London para mas ma-improve ang kanyang English study at para gumawa ng annotation of Antonio Margas' Successos de las Islas Filipinas. And na-realize niya na ito yung place to carry on doon sa reforms na gusto niya sa ating bansa. May 88, March 1889. He spent 10 months in the reading room of the British Museum, deeply immersed in his historical studies in London. This was the greatest achievement of Rizal in London, the annotating of Margas' book, Successos de las Islas Filipinas, Historical Events of the Philippine Islands, which was published in Mexico in 1609. So, sa pag-spend ni Rizal ng 10 months sa British Museum, ito yung naging greatest achievement ni Rizal sa London, na the annotating of Margas' book, Successos de las Filipinas, na na-publish sa Mexico noong 1609. Rizal and the La Solidaridad. December 31, 1888. Inauguration of Association La Solidaridad or La Solidaridad Association, a patriotic society. The crusade for reforms in the Philippines government. By unanimous vote of all members, Rizal was chosen honorary president. This was a recognition of his leadership among all Filipinos patriots in Europe. So, dahil naman sa unanimous decision or boto ng lahat ng members ni Rizal, siya ang napili na maging honorary president. Dito ginanap yung recognition niya sa pagiging leader among all Filipinos patriots sa Europe. February 15, 1889. Graciano Lopez, one of founded patriotic newspaper called La Solidaridad in Barcelona, a fortnightly periodical which served as the organ of the propaganda movement. Its aims were as follows: to work peacefully for political and social reforms, to portray the deplorable conditions of the Philippines, so that the Spain may remedy them, to oppose the evil forces of reaction and medievalism, to advocate liberal ideas and progress, to champion the legitimate aspirations of the Filipino people to life, democracy and happiness. During his stays in London, Rizal also made use of his time in writing essays and articles for La Solidaridad. He also wrote La Vision del Fray Rodriguez or The Vision of Fray Rodriguez pamphlet, which published in Barcelona under his non-diplom demas alang in order to defend his novel. During naman doon sa pagstay ni Rizal sa London, nilaan niya naman ang oras niya sa pagsusulat ng mga essay and articles para sa La Solidaridad. So, isa sa mga nasulat niya ay ang La Vision del Fray Rodriguez or The Vision of Fray Rodriguez. In London, Rizal received both good news and bad news from news. The good news that Reverend Vicente Garcia was defending his Noli from attacks of the friars. On the other hand, the bad news were that the Filipino signatories of the petition of 1888 and the tenants of the Calamba agrarian trouble were facing persecution. That his brother-in-law, Manuel T. Hidalgo and Mariano Herbosa, were exiled to Bohol and was denied Christian burial, respectively, and his friend Laureno Villadoa, a UST medical student, was imprisoned for possessing some copies of his Noli. So dito naman is nakatanggap si Rizal ng good news at bad news. Ang good news dito ay si Reverend Vicente Garcia ay dinepensahan ang kanyang Noli sa pag-atake ng mga friars. At ang bad news naman ay ang Tenas ng Calamba ay nakatanggap ng persecution at ito ang mga brother-in-law ni Rizal na sina Manuel T. Hidalgo at Mariano Herbosa. At ang kaibigan niya naman na si Laureno Viodoa ay na-imprison dahil he possessing some copies ng kanyang noli. Paris. It was mid-March 1899. Rizal decided to move to Paris. He noticed that Parisian life was different from the life he experienced in London. It was a city bursting with merriment, exciting events, and unending social gathering. The cost of living was also very high. Rizal never lost his focus, although life in Paris was gay. He continued to spend long hours at the National Library in Paris. There he went on reviewing and rewriting his historical annotations on the Morga Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. It was published on January 1890. He also wrote a satirical booklet entitled Por Telefono in answer to Salvacion Port, a Spanish friar who hurled attacks on the Noli Me Tangere and caused its banning. So, hindi nawala si Rizal sa focus kahit sabi niya ay life in Paris was gay. Nagpatuloy pa din siya sa National Library sa Paris para i-review at i-rewrite ang kanyang historical annotation on the Maragos successors de las Filipinas. At he also wrote a satirical booklet na may pamagat na Por Telefono in answer to Salvacion Fort, dahil ito ang naging dahilan ng pagkaban ng kanyang Noli Me Tangere. He continued his study in various languages, especially the French language, which he was able to perfect during his 10 months stay at the French capital city. He organized a social club called Kidlat Club, a social club which brought together young Filipinos residing in Paris soon, and member of the said club founded a new Filipino society in the Indios Bravos, an organization which envisioned Filipinos being recognized by Spain for being excellent in various fields of knowledge. In between his more serious activity, Rizal also had leisurely activities like socializing with friends in their homes. Among those he frequently visited were the homes of the Pardo de Taveras, the Venturas, the Lunas, the Bosteds, and others. So, maliban sa kanyang mga activities, si Rizal ay nagkaroon ng leisurely activities para makipag-socialize sa mga kaibigan sa kanilang mga bahay. Maliban doon, binisita niya rin ang mga bahay kung saan nakatira si Pardo de Taveras, the Venturas, the Lunas, the Bosteds, at iba pa. Although Rizal lived a frugal life, he prepared a sumptuous Christmas dinner for some of his friends. Shortly after New Year, he visited London for the last time in Brussels. January 28, 1890, left Paris for Brussels. He left the extravagant and gay social life in Paris and stayed in a boarding house owned by the Jacobi sisters in Brussels. From 1889 to 1890, Rizal continued contributing for La Solidaridad under the names Dimas, Alang, and Laang Laang. Among the 10 articles he had contributed, below were some of the most famous important articles. First, the Philippines Within a Century article, written by Rizal, which he expressed his views on the Spanish colonizations in the Philippines. Second, the indolence of the Filipinos. It is an able defense of the alleged indolence of the Filipinos. Next, the Sobre la Nueva or Tagrofia de la Lengua Tagala, or the new orthography of the Tagalog language. In this article, he laid down the rules of the new Tagalog orthography. From Calamba, Rizal received letters telling that the agrarian trouble in the province was getting worse, and as such, he decided to go home. But instead of going home, a letter from Pasiano told him that they already lost the case against the Dominicans. So galing Calamba, si Rizal ay nakatanggap ng letter na nagsasabi na ang agrarian trouble sa province ay lalong lumalala. So napagdesisyon niya na umuwi na. Pero imbis na umuwi, nakatanggap siya ng letter galing kay Pasiano na sabi sa kanya ay they already lost the case against doon sa mga Dominicans. and need nila ng lawyer na magde-defend sa kanilang families. Rizal wrote a letter to Pons. He announced that he was leaving Brussels and decided to go to Madrid because his case must be presented to the Supreme Court and he needs to pay close attention to the developments of the case. So napagdesisyonan nga ni Rizal na pumunta na sa Madrid para ayusin yung kaso sa Supreme Court at magbayad para sa close attention para sa development kaso. Misfortunes in Madrid, 1890 to 1891. August 1890, Rizal arrived in Madrid. Upon arrive in Madrid, Rizal immediately sought help of the Filipinos colony, the Association Hispano-Filipina, and the liberal Spanish newspaper in securing justice from the oppressed Calamba tenants. Nothing came out of his several newspapers were sympathetic to the plight of the Calamba tenants, but his did not translate to any form of action. By this time, Francisco Rizal and the other tenants were already forcibly evicted from Calamba by Governor-General Valeriano Weyler. Their houses were burned and more people were exiled regardless of their gender. August 1890, Rizal attended a social reunion of the Filipinos in Madrid. After drinking so many glasses, the guests became more talkative. One of them, Antonio Luna, became drunk. Rizal challenged Antonio Luna. It was about the latter's frustrations with his unsuccessful love affair, which Nelly boasted. It so gave negative remarks on the lady which Rizal did not tolerate. The Filipinos tried to pacify them, pointing out that such a duel would damage their case in Spain. Fortunately, Luna realized his mistakes. He apologized and Rizal immediately accepted his apology and became good friends again. So dito naman ay baten si Rizal ng social reunion ng mga Filipino sa Madrid. Pagkatapos makadami ng inom ng mga guest, mas naging talkative ang mga guest. Isa na dito si Antonio Luna na lasing na. Dito niyaya ni Rizal na ng challenge patungkol dun sa latter's frustration dun sa unsuccessful love affair niya with Nelly patungkol dun sa latter's frustration dun sa unsuccessful love affair niya with Nelly Boston na hindi ito na-tolerate ni Rizal. So dito na-realize ni Antonio ang mali niya at nag-apologize tungkol dito at agad naman itong tinanggap ni Rizal at naging magkaibigan ulit. Rizal challenged Wenceslao Ritana in a duel. Ritana had insulted Rizal and his family by writing in La Epoca, an anti-Filipino newspaper, that the Rizal family in Calamba was ejected from their lands because they did not pay their rents. Rizal was in nature neither hot-tempered, but when the honor of his people, family, women, or friends was besmirched, he never hesitated to fight, even he were risking his own life. Ritana at once published a retraction and an apology. He knew that Rizal was superior in both pistol and sword. So, challenge naman ni Rizal si Wenceslao Ritana ng duelo. Dahil ininsulto nito si Rizal at ang kanyang pamilya. At ito ang dahilan ba't yung family ni Rizal ay na-ejected dun sa land nila dahil hindi nakabayad ng rent. Hindi nagdalawang isip si Rizal na labanan ito kahit alam niyang nakataya ang kanyang buhay dito. December 1890, Rizal received a letter from Leonor Rivera announcing her coming marriage to Henry Kipping, an Englishman, the choice of her mother. This was a big blow for him and his heart broke. Nakatanggap naman ulit ng letter si Rizal, galing naman kay Leonor Rivera, na patungkol sa kanyang kasal sa lalaki na si Henry Kipping, na nagparamdam kay Rizal ng pagkabigo. Another marked event in Madrid was the Marcelo H. del Pilar Jose Rizal rivalry for leadership in the Association Hispano-Filipino. A fraction emerged from the Filipinos in Madrid, the Rizalistas and Pilaristas. The group decided that the leader must be elected by 2/3 vote. Rizal won the election. He was offered the appointment, but he did not want to see the Filipinos in Madrid divided, so he thought it best to leave the city. Rizal took a vacation in the resort city of Biarritz on the fabulous French Riviera. He was a guest of the rich boasted family, at his winter residence, Villa Eliada. The 1 month vacation in the city worked wonders for Rizal. This is where he was able to finish his second novel, El Filibusterismo. March 30, 1891. Rizal bade farewell to the hospitable and friendly Bosteds and proceeded to Paris by train. He stayed at the home of his friend Valentina Ventura. Retirement from the propaganda movement. April 1891. Rizal was back to Brussels, where he became busy revising and polishing the manuscript of Il Filibusterismo. Rizal retired from the propaganda movement. He notified the propaganda authorities in Manila to cancel his monthly allowance and devoted the money to some better cause, such as the education of a young Filipino student in Europe. He desired to publish his second novel, to practice his medical profession, and later, when he became financially independent, he expected to make a more vigorous campaign for his country's redemption. Simultaneously with his retirement from the propaganda movement, Rizal ceased writing articles for La Solidaridad. Many of his friends in Spain urged him to continue writing because his articles always attracted considerable attention in Europe countries. Doon naman about sa retirement from propaganda movement, karamihan sa mga kaibigan niya ay sinasabihan siya na i-continue ang pagsulat dahil ang article niya ay attracted sa mga European countries. Emis del Pilar himself realized the need for Rizal collaboration in both the propaganda movement and in the La Solidaridad newspaper because the enthusiasm for the Reform Crusade was declining. He wrote to Rizal begging for forgiveness for any resentment and requesting him to resume writing for La Solidaridad. Why he stopped writing? Below are reasons why Rizal stopped writing for La Solidaridad. So ito naman yung mga reasons kung bakit huminto si Rizal sa pagsulat para dun sa La Solidaridad. First is, Rizal need to work on his books. Second, he wanted other Filipinos to work also. Third, Rizal considered it very important to the party that there be unity in the work. Fourth, Marcelo H. del Pilar is already at the top and Rizal also have his own ideas. It is better to leave del Pilar alone to direct the policy. The printing of El Filibusterismo, July 5, 1891. Rizal left Brussels for Ghent, a famous university city in Belgium. Because the cost of printing in Ghent was cheaper than in Brussels, F. Mayer van Loo pressed a printing shop that gave Rizal the lowest quotation for the publication of his novel. August 6, 1891. The printing of his books had to be suspended because Rizal could no longer give the necessary funds to the printer. Valentin Ventura, the savior of the File, when he learned of Rizal's predicament, sent him the necessary funds. September 18, 1891. El Filibusterismo came off the press. Rizal gratefully donated the original manuscript and an autograph printed copy to Valentin Ventura. That's all. Thank you.